Howdy, this is the Isabelle Wellman podcast, a space where we question the deeper meaning of life, explore the magic of being human, and honor the Greek warrior within ourselves. Expand with new perspectives and design your life through the radical acceptance of you. It's time to learn how to live by a new set of rules. Giddy up, take a deep belly breath, subscribe to the podcast, and let's go on an adventure. Our first sponsor is Vibe Nutraceuticals. Since 2020, I've been on a journey of connecting more intimately with the natural world and herbal medicine, especially to optimize my energy. As a holistic health practitioner, I respect the work-life balance so I can avoid burnout and honor my cyclical nature. With that said, it means I've been searching for plant allies and natural compounds to elevate my grand rising ritual to sustain energy all day. In the search has come Vibe Nutraceuticals. Vibe Up is a flavorless powder that acts as a coffee or tea additive, and it contains 8 Boss Lady allies. Whenever I add this to my half-calf coffee or a matcha, I feel like I embody the cross between Wonder Woman and Hermione Granger. A smooth focus that bypasses the jitters or crash of caffeine alone, an intense pump during my workouts while enhancing my recovery, and somehow it manages to magically increase my libido so I can not only work, but play, if you know what I'm saying. Make my new besties your new besties. Use code Isabelle10 at checkout. Let me tell you about Mana Yi. Last year, I had the most spectacular time at the Sisters Convergence. This year, it is happening again in Crete, Greece, September 23rd to October 2nd. This is an immersion for the sisters who are curious of ancient mysteries, their cosmic lineage, connecting deeper with nature, and demantling their relationship with conditions. During this convergence last year, I went through so many different layers of peeling back the onion, of seeing myself for who I truly am, and it was the first time I felt safe to fully express myself in my fullness, in my total lioness energy. I cannot recommend this enough. Please go to paulinaprana.com to learn more about this soul-nourishing experience. It's now summer. It's hot. It's fast and it's quick, and it feels like time does not have any relativity when I think about the 24-hour clock. And how we talked about like the 24-hour cycle in the male and then the 28-ish day cycle in the woman over a whole month-long period. I think about how seasons and cycles are constantly being layered in our everyday life and bringing in more of a microscopic look so that we can focus on how to operate in those seasons, even if our body might be in a different season. And I'd love to hear how you use our next archetype to set that stage and perform.
Yeah. The archetype that goes along with the summer really well is the mother creator archetype. And just to recap about what an archetype exactly is, it's just a pattern of energy that we all have inside of us, that it's kind of like a collective memory bank of energies. So if you look at all cultures across the world and you ask them what is a mother, they would all have an idea of what a mother is. So it's a pattern of energy that appears across time, culture, place. And even if we describe them as something different, we all have a basic understanding of what this is to us. If you want to hear more about archetypes more in depth, the podcast that we did right before this, I go a lot more in depth into it. We're just going to jump into the mother creator now. Yeah. So like you're asking about the summer, that energy is really symbolized by the mother creator goddess. And that's my name for it. And again, if you have other names, I encourage everyone to name their archetypes whatever you want them to be. So that's my name for it. And it kind of has two energies. So there's the mother energy to it, and that's the sort of nurturing, taking care of energy. And then there's also the creator energy. So that's like putting forth, giving out into the world. So we see both of these energies really strongly in summer. You look at all the abundance that's happening. The world is just creating. The earth is just creating, right? New leaves, new baby birds, new fruits on the trees, just so much newness, new growth and everything. It's the newness that happened during the spring is really reaching its peak during the summer. Abundance is one of the main themes that we have with the mother creator goddess and the summer feeling. And this also corresponds with ovulation and women's menstrual cycle. So that's the time period in the cycle where we're most fertile, most likely to get pregnant. Also, on a basic level, energy cycle, looking at the cycle, that's when our hormones are really high and we have all this energy. I know that's not always true for everyone, but as a basic framework, it can be where we have the most energy. You can see how all those energies kind of stack on each other and those cycles within cycles, like you were talking about.
I was just ovulating last week, and because we had our conversation the week prior, I've been tracking my days. So tracking what day of my menstrual cycle I'm on, or just my cycle I'm on. And then I haven't done the moon part yet. I'll get to that. But what day I'm on, and then my energy, and just a couple of sentences that follow it. And I was it's not that I was in shock of what I found, but I was just way more aware and way more in flow with my energy and what I was capable of holding. And as I've begun my luteal phase and trickling into that fall, and the winds have been blowing quite literally, and the stormy clouds are coming in, I was like, all right, that kind of felt like too much today. Let me regress, let me take back, and let me shift. And I think that shift is a really important part of this entire archetypal system, because it's almost like we have to blend them. And I think you mentioned that in our last podcast.
Yes, and I will talk a little bit about that at some point here, because I was just contemplating this week, actually, how the Virgin Warrior kind of sets the stage for the Mother Creator. I'll maybe dive into that a little bit later, but I love hearing that you are noticing these things. And that's the most powerful thing about tracking your cycle, is just to be like, what am I feeling today? To be able to pull in your own experiences with the seasons and with these archetypes to have insights into your life and how you want to move through it and flow with it. Because so often we're just swimming against the tide because we've been taught to do this or that, or we have these patterns that were created kind of for us, and they're not our patterns. So this is about creating the patterns that we want to with our own energy.
Creating our own powers based on our own energy. That is probably the biggest permission slip for any people pleaser out there. I know I grew up as a huge people pleaser. I never knew who I was. I felt like a chameleon a lot of the time. Yeah. And I would really love for you to dive into the positives. I know you touched on a little bit so far, the abundance, the nurture, this peak of our energy, of our essence, and then the shadow side of this mother archetype.
Yeah, definitely. The natural energy of the mother creator goddess is, like I said, the abundance. There's a lot of generosity in it, giving, outward focus, and caretaking, things like that. And then we also, at this time of summer / ovulation / the mother creator reminds us of this, we have this energy of pleasure as well. Summer is just so fun. I know not everybody agrees with this, but I love summer. You see people outside just having so much fun, jumping in the rivers and going on trips and spending time outside at the park. And there's this feeling of enjoyment about it. The long days and the warmth, that feeling of pleasure. Anytime you can really pull that feeling of full pleasure into your life, to me, that's embodying that mother creator goddess. I know what the world is capable of in terms of enjoyment and pleasure, and I'm going to embody that. I feel like I could say more on that, but I think I'll move on to the creator part of it too, because it kind of goes together. The creating aspect, a lot of times we hear about this word manifestation, which I feel like is sort of a nebulous word, but the mother creator really has this manifesting quality to her. If you think about a mother who gives birth to a child, that is such a crazy, amazing thing, right? Like growing another human inside of you and putting that out into the world. So crazy on that level. And then we have all these other ways that we can create, like all the businesses that we come up with. We look at Mother Earth, the things that she creates, like all the animals and all the food that she makes for us, the birds. Think about the places you love to go. Like, she has created all of this for us. The mother creator really has this ability to manifest things. And I love to think about the way that she manifests is just kind of limitless. I love to think about if you've ever seen a tree just growing on a bare rock, basically. She's just like creating that out of nothing that doesn't have any soil. I love thinking about that in my own life. Like, well, no, I think conditions don't have to be perfect. Things don't have to be exactly the way I think they need to be in order to manifest something. And this is where I tie it back to pleasure, is when we're in that flow of pleasure and gratitude and really just noticing the abundance around us, that's when manifestation really happens, when we're letting that flow in. And that's what the mother creator really reminds us, is if we can be grateful for what we have and notice the abundance around us, she wants to give us more. This is just a very powerful archetype, and I'm in awe of that magic that she has.
I love how you brought up the tree, just growing on a rock. The limitless opportunities anywhere you look. I think right now I've been just hearing a lot of people sharing like, oh, don't start a business, we're in a recession, or don't do this, it's not the right time. But when is the right time ever?
Right.
You could even acknowledge like, oh, I can create that right time. I can pull in this mother creator energy, which just by imagining the birth of a baby, the food you're eating, Mother Earth grows this food. The food comes to us. We eat this food goes to that baby. This baby one day comes out into the world, and that cycle just never ends. And that in itself harnesses so much magnetism for more of that to just keep flowing, just like you were saying.
Yeah. I like to recommend, if anybody feels like they're having a block with sort of manifestation, is go back and look at like, how much pleasure am I experiencing in life right now? How much gratitude am I feeling right now? Do I feel like things are abundant, or do I feel like things are scarce right now? And changing your mindset around that. That's what that mother creator energy can really teach us. Believing too in our full potential. Whenever I think about her, I always get this picture of the full moon too, of just like this ball of light just bursting with energy. And if we can really tap into that feeling within us and believe it to be true and believe ourselves to be worthy of it, then amazing things can happen.
It's, as you're saying all this, I'm just connecting when we have fun, when we feel joy, when we feel this pleasure, the good things happen. Like, can you remember a time you were having fun and you got upset about a bad thing? It's hard to even, when you're so wound up in this happiness, this fullness, to have something less than pleasurable happen, and you're like, you just don't transfer to that. You can only hold one feeling at a time. It's like how we talked last week with the virgin warrior goddess and how her shadow was nitpicking as one of the things, destructive self-behavior.
Yeah, totally. Segueing into the shadow of the mother creator, if she is not in balance, some of the things that can show up, we can call them shadows. And these are not bad things necessarily. These are just lights that can go off for us that are like, hey, let's look at this and see if there is some balance you can bring here. So one of the first things is being really controlling. Her natural energy is very giving, but if she wants to control this giving, she may become very overprotective, overbearing, smothering, needing things to go a certain way. And if she's not able to just give freely just because she wants to give but feels like she needs something back, she may become very controlling about that giving, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And then another one is martyrdom. So if she is giving, and then she's putting everybody before herself and doesn't actually give herself any of that mothering energy, which is very important, that she may become angry or upset that people are not actually appreciating what she has to give, she'll end up neglecting her own self. And then this is where we can also see some symptoms of codependency too. Of, I'm giving you this, but I need to get this back from you. In pure essence, the mother creator gives out of pure love. And actually, love is one of her natural energies that I didn't mention yet. It really is just this pure love. And I always think about it as a person standing very stable and giving out. It's not like they're trying to lean on somebody as they give and need a give and take. It's like if I am solid in myself, I can give and not necessarily need to receive back. I will receive back. But if I'm like grasping for and needing to receive back, that kind of stops that flow of energy. And this is actually where I was making that connection with the Virgin Warrior, because the Virgin Warrior, if you didn't listen to the first one, go back and listen to it if this is piquing your interest. But if she doesn't put in that energy to establish herself and create her boundaries and know who she is, I think that's really easy for then the mother creator energy to get off. So there's this interplay between the two of them. They're adjacent on the wheel of the seasons and how they correspond with the seasons. So Virgin Warrior is spring, then we flow into summer, who is the mother creator energy. We need to do that work first before the mother creator can be balanced. But again, it's not a first then, it's very circular and fluid, but just to simplify that.
Making that distinction between love and expectation.
Mm-hmm.
That is in my brain. I see the Virgin Warrior goddess establishing herself, creating this stance, this physical form that now she can now operate out of. And then the mother is that form. And she's a strong form when she's solid in herself. She trusts that whatever she has taught the youngster she has birthed, or she is showing others, or how she's holding herself as a role model, she's trusting how others are reacting or operating towards her is going to flow exactly how it needs to. It's going to happen in the best way possible for that scenario to either learn, grow, or receive that abundance. And there's not that level of worry or that level of distrust or that level of, did I do good enough? That self-doubt that could bring in. That's what I'm feeling with you describing both of these energies, especially with seeing them go from one to the next.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up trust too, because I don't have that written down in my notes of something that I have associated with the mother creator in the past. But now that you're saying that, I'm like, oh yeah, I think trust is a huge energy for the mother creator. She trusts in abundance. She trusts in her power of creation. She trusts that what she puts out into the world will be useful, will be helpful, and she doesn't necessarily need to have a one-to-one correlation of like, I give this out and I get this back, I'll put something out and things will flow back to me.
Yeah.
So trust is beautiful addition.
How would you give advice for someone who might feel like they maybe aren't feeling that trust, or they aren't feeling that sturdiness in themselves, and how could they bring in more of those positive aspects?
Whenever there is a disconnect or an imbalance with the mother creator, what I think about is the gratitude piece. Because if there is gratitude, I think that flows into everything else. One of the practices that I like to teach that ties in with the nature connection practices that I do, I maybe mentioned a little bit in the last episode, is sitting in nature and just giving thanks for everything that you see and feel, but not just an intellectual, like, oh, I'm thankful for the bird, or I'm thankful for the sun, or I'm thankful for this fresh air, but really using your senses to experience it. If you sit there, and I'll do this sometimes where I'm sitting there and I'm feeling the sun on my face, I'll close my eyes and I'll really feel it. Like, what does this feel in texture and form? And another layer that I add to it too is imagining what it would be like to not have that. Or I think about like a really cold winter day where I'm craving the sun. And then I feel like that takes my gratitude to this other level, and sitting and basking in that and filling yourself up with that gratitude Or if you're hearing a bird sing, not just letting it come in and be like, wow, that was a really beautiful sound, I'm grateful for it, but really like, tune into it, really appreciate every note of that song, appreciate where that bird is, appreciate who that bird is, appreciate what that bird is doing. If there is an imbalance with the mother creator, I think coming back to gratitude can help reset a lot of things.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That is the medicine. That was
Yeah.
in retrospect 2020. I had just gotten out of my longest relationship, moving back in with my dad for the summer because all the COVID things. And I finally felt like I had space to be grateful. I didn't see what was happening in the world as a negative. I was like, whoa, for me personally in this moment, nothing is wrong, scary, or worrisome. It is very still. It's very peaceful. I get to just, like you said, bask in this. And every morning I'd walk in the property and I'd
Mhm.
listen to the birds and I'd feel the ground with my feet and I'd appreciate the softness or the wetness of the dew on the grass and
Mhm.
being able to disconnect from whatever issues are happening external, internally, and come back to the earth or just come back to the natural world and
Mhm.
tap into our sight. Oh, how beautiful the colors are, and really contemplating. I think contemplation is a really big piece of this as well.
Mhm.
The sounds, the feels, the taste, the smells, all of these things are just so arousing. And I
Mhm.
think when we're hyper vigilant, hyper fast, we just forget about it. We put it on the
Mhm.
back burner because they're so easy for us to tune into all the time that we
Yeah,
just let it go.
I so agree. One more thing I would say about the martyr feeling too is having an ability to look at what you're doing
Mm.
and let go of some of it. I think a lot of times we put expectations on ourselves and then we become resentful of thinking that other people want something of us and remembering that the mother gives from what she really wants to give. So if we're giving just because we think we have put an expectation on ourselves that someone else wants or needs this. Sometimes we think someone else needs something. They don't really need it. We think they do. And then we give it because we think they need it. We need to do that. And then it just turns into that cycle of resentment. Being able to heal that side of ourselves is really important too. And a great lesson from the mother creator.
Do you have any experiences with this within yourself where maybe you had felt one of these shadowy ways and how you brought yourself out of it?
There's actually a third shadow that I'll mention because this is actually my one shadow, probably that I feel the most associated with. And so that next shadow is fearful, is having fear, afraid to create or bring something into the world because it might not survive. That is a huge fear, maybe not explicitly in that way, but I think maybe a subconscious fear of a lot of mother creators in whatever way, not necessarily children, but when we create something, that's putting ourselves out there, and creating something also creates the risk for that thing to be taken away, to die, to be destroyed. If a mother creator is not balanced, she may not create out of fear. So that's actually one that I identify with the most, especially because I don't have children. I see my business as my baby or my creation. I run into fear a lot with that and not wanting to put something out there because it could be cut down, destroyed, not survive, not thrive.
The power behind you speaking, birthing it, and it not surviving, the fear of it not surviving,
Yeah.
that hit very deeply in my heart. I was like, that hurts a lot.
Yeah, I know. And again, I think tying this back to that ability of the mother creator to put something out there just out of pure love and not needing to get something back out of it. So if that thing does die, of course there will be grief around it. Of course there should be mourning and all those things. And also knowing that there is always newness beyond that death. This is where I know I talked last week about how the mother creator and the wise woman crone, the two that are on the other side. So I think about them like on a circle. So we have the mother creator up here at summer, the wild woman enchantress coming out of summer, the wise woman crone during winter, and then the virgin warrior is spring, increasing energy again. And I notice a lot of similarities between the two archetypes that come on the top and the bottom of the circle and the two sides, and then the ones that are adjacent to each other. I think about how her energy, even though Mother Creator is very different than the Wise Woman Crone, there's still some of that steady energy in there. It's that wisdom piece of I've arrived and I know deep in my soul that everything is going to be okay. When the Mother Creator is imbalanced, we can tap into that deep wisdom that we also see in the Wise Woman Crone. Tap into some of that deep wisdom to know that everything is going to be okay. If I create and put something out there and it doesn't work out, there will be another cycle.
As there always is.
Yeah.
As you're just explaining how every part of this circle, whether it's top to bottom, side to side, adjacent, across, perpendicular, I think cycles make the most sense because there are all of these similarities and differences at the same time. And that really makes it that complete whole thing, that fullness of summer. Summer has everything.
That's pretty much the overview of the Mother Creator. And then the work from there is to look into your own life and see, where do I see her? Where do I see her shadows? How can I add more of the positive energies and address the shadows so that I can grow and not sit in those shadows, because they're for our growth. That's not necessarily where we want to be all the time.
Do you have a good practice for those listening when it comes to those shadows or recognizing those shadows? Maybe it's hard for us to see or call ourselves out on what those are that we may be prescribing to unconsciously, subconsciously.
You mean for people to identify the shadows in themselves? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Maybe listening to this podcast again, taking down some notes on what I mentioned the shadows were, but just awareness first. So if you're really interested in doing some shadow work on these, having a list that you keep somewhere that you look at occasionally that shows you what the shadows are. And then from there, recognizing in your life. For me, I'm not a huge journaler. Well, I have like a million journals that I use. I journal in a lot of different ways, but to write things down about myself, I often just think through it, when I'm on a walk or a run or whatever, and I just catalog it. But if you are a writer, then journal. Otherwise, I say it's totally fine to just think about it in your life. Because I'm just always analyzing everything that's going on in my world from so many different standpoints. So awareness first, then noticing. And then from there, you can look at it and see. I think most of us can probably look at a shadow and be like, okay, if I'm being too controlling, if I'm being overprotective, overbearing here, what do I need to do in order to let that go? Why am I doing that over controlling? How can I change my actions in a way that feels good so that I'm experiencing the positive things, the pleasure, the gratitude, the abundance?
Very simple and very easy. It doesn't have to be a scary, intense journeying into the soul every single time. It can be lighthearted and curious looking at the shadow.
Another practice that I do like to do, if you're looking into the dark shadows and you're writing about it and it's really getting you down, that can definitely happen to me if I'm focusing on it. Then it starts to be like, oh, I'm just like swimming in all this murky grossness. Doing a really positive journal after, where do I want to be? And really taking it on, not from a wishful thinking standpoint of like, oh, it would be really great if I could do this, but more like I am generous. I am able to experience pleasure. I am grateful. I am abundant, and really writing it as if you are already there. And doing that is a very powerful way after you've looked at some of the shadows, if you need it, to pull yourself out of that, to recognize that we do have the light side of all these things in us. If you're looking at one of these archetypes and you feel like all you feel is the shadow from it, do know that we do also have the light side. All of us have the light sides. It's in you, and you just need to spark it in some way.
Yeah, just like yin and yang. That's what it reminds me of, the dark and the light. It's always this masculine and this feminine energy mingling, flowing in and out of one another. One of my last questions is, could you go about this in a way of going through your Virgin Warrior and then your Mother Creator and seeing where you have maybe not established yourself all the way, or you have grown into who you are, or you know what you like? thus bringing you into this ability to create because you want to create it, because you're passionate about it. Could you go back and do that to go through a shadowy aspect of this?
Looking at each one through a shadow lens? Oh, yeah, totally. And I definitely recommend that because they all balance each other out, like I was saying. And so anytime you work on the shadow side of one of them, that will help trickle into the others as well. And there's always something to be learned within these shadows for all of them. And you might notice that your shadow is strongest in one of them and maybe not as much shadow in another one. That's okay too. That's great information. Doing it with all of them is awesome.
Do you have any last things that you want to say about the Mother Creator Goddess and interweaving it into your everyday life?
I think I covered everything. I mean, I'm sure I could probably say more, but right now, nothing's coming to mind. So.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Bri. And I didn't have you say this last time, but I want you to just let everyone know where they can find you, where they can hang out with you.
Oh, yeah, totally. So my website is wild-moon.org. And my Instagram is at wildmoonexperiences, all spelled the way you would think it would be, all one word. What I do is I work with women to get more in touch with their menstrual cycles, their moon cycles, and their archetypes, and the flow of their own energy, and also in touch with themselves through connecting with nature. I also lead backpacking trips to do that as well and combine all the things together, get out into the wilderness and spend some time together, unwinding and reconnecting.
We all need more of the feminine energies coming together outside. There's nothing quite like it. Well, thank you so much, Bri. This has been phenomenal. I can't wait for next week. So everyone, we're doing this every week for the next 4 weeks. It's a 4 series.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really having fun diving deep into each one.
I know it's beneficial for anyone who's listening. It's beneficial for me. Please listen to last week's podcast if y'all haven't yet. And all of this will make so much more sense. Not that it wouldn't make sense if you just listen to this one, but you're going to receive so much more. And that's what this podcast episode's all about, is receiving the abundance. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and we will catch you next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I say that with a ton of reverence for your time and your energy, and for allowing this show to be a part of your day. That is meaningful. Please consider leaving a 5-star review, following along on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out the video version on YouTube, and come hang out with me on Threads. We are making an impact together every single day that we stand up and we share, we learn, and we thrive.